All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Everyone that is logged in and watching here. Tonight is going to be kind of another test run. Unfortunately, we've got almost a full moon tonight, so a lot of the targets will be a little bit washed out, but there's still plenty to choose from tonight. I think we're going to check out some globular star clusters, probably some galaxies, and hopefully some nebula if they don't get too washed out. So what we're looking at right here is just like a 2-second exposure on M45, which is the Pleiades. So let's try to do just like a 60-second image of the Pleiades, just to kind of show you what that looks like. And the Pleiades is basically just, it's called an open star cluster. And so I will set this to 60 seconds. And we are exposing. All right, so let me take off the webcam here for a second. All right, so over on this right side, in this area, you can see this number is counting down. That is the exposure time right there. This is basically just the shutter button that I click to start the exposure. This is the mount guide. We don't need to see that. But down here in this lower right corner, it says shooting. So that lets you know that it is exposing. Once it's done exposing right here, this will say preparing, and that just means it's preparing to send the image to the live stream here. So we've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Preparing. And then this little progress bar will pop up and our image will pop up. And wow, we do have some serious, some moon glow here. You can see this huge band here. This is basically, the moonlight is, or the moon is just right above the Pleiades here. So it's almost shining directly into the telescope, kind of in an angle. So what we're going to do, we're going to pick several different targets that are hopefully a little bit farther away from the moon and will expose a little better. So let's see, let me look at my list of targets here. Let's see what we can choose from tonight. M15. M15. So let's give that a shot. It might still be a little bit early for M15. So what we're looking at here, this is just the planetarium software, and the software that I'm using is designed by ASIAir or ZWO, and it's the ASIair Plus. So basically, I can look at objects. I can like scroll through here, or I can just type in an object right here. So I'm just going to type in M15 for the Pegasus cluster, and we might be able to see that. Let's give that a try. All right, so the mount is slewing to position. And here up in this this upper right corner, you can see the telescope as it slews into to the right position there. It just acquired M15. And it's going to shoot a couple of images to make sure that it's lined up properly. You can see over here it says target is centered. So we're going to do an exposure here. And so for this one, let's just start off with like a 10-second exposure just for a comparison. All right, and there we see the cluster in the center there. You can see the main core and lots and lots of stars surrounding it there. You can see a little bit of reddish color in there. Well, hopefully you can see a little bit of color. I don't know how well you can see that on the YouTube screen, but let's go ahead and boost this up to a 30-second exposure. And as that exposes, we got 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There it is, a little bit brighter in 30 seconds. I'm trying not to completely blow out the the center core, but it looks like this telescope is so fast. It's a f1.9, which means it acquires the light very, very quickly. So if we did a 60-second exposure, it probably will blow out the core, but that's okay. It should allow us to see more stars around that central core. So let's try to do a 60-second exposure just for comparison. All right, starting that exposure. All right, just about finished with that exposure. Oh wow! Now check this out. This happens quite often now. These two trails that you see, these are satellite trails, and in this part of the sky, they're probably these probably are not Starlink satellites. They're probably geosynchronous satellites, but they could be Starlink. I haven't checked the satellite maps tonight, but we can see quite a few more stars in the globular cluster here. Let's see if I can kind of center this up a little bit. So All right, that is a 60-second exposure, and I think we're going to be okay if we do try a 2-minute exposure. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to 120. And I was hoping to do what's called live stacking, which basically means that as it takes each image, it starts to add them all together, and it basically brings all of the best pixels together, and it makes the image brighter. You'll see a lot more detail, and it'll get a lot sharper. A lot more color will come through. But generally, whenever I do that, that means that I'm saving that image to process later to make an Astro image. But the moon is so bright tonight, I can tell that there's a lot of moon glow. It's probably about 85% full tonight. So tonight is basically just kind of testing out the equipment a little bit more. Excuse me. I'm actually using a new filter. I've been using this Antlia quad light pollution filter, which it filters out everything except for 4 narrow bands of light emission, which would be the hydrogen alpha emission, the oxygen, sulfur, and a little bit of broadband, just to add just a touch of color in there. But so with this bright moon, it will knock back a little bit of the moon glow, but since we're still sampling in 4 narrowband channels, that does overlap with some of the moon's light waves, so we will still get some crossover light there. So, all right, let's try a different channel here, a different target. I mean, what do we have to choose from? There's Saturn. I wish I could show you Saturn here, but it's this telescope. Even though it's a fairly large telescope, I've got this lens adapter on it called a Hyperstar that greatly reduces my my focal length, so we really wouldn't be able to see much of anything on Saturn here. But let's see. Let me check my target list again. Let's see here. Let's try. We might be able to do Bode's Galaxy M81. Let's give that a shot. It has been a long time since I have targeted M81. And the field of view on this telescope is so wide that we very well could get M82, which is called the Cigar Galaxy, in the same frame with Bode's Galaxy here. Actually, this might still be too low on the horizon. Let me check this out. Well, maybe. It is going towards it, so. You can see the telescope slowing up in the upper right corner there. Bode's Galaxy is a really large galaxy. Wow, there we go. Okay, so we are going to be able to frame this up. I've photographed this many times, and it just always blows my mind with. There's just so much detail in it. You'll see a lot of nebulosity if you really do long exposures and stack a lot of long exposures together. So let's see what we've got here. All right, it's plate solving now. That means that it's looking at stars in this region and basically doing a triangulation to make sure that it's centered up properly. Okay, so it might still be, it's taking it a while to solve here, so it might be a little too low. It might be behind some tree edges here. Alright, I'm going to stop that, and just because I'm curious, I'm going to do a 10-second exposure just to see. It might be behind some tree limbs or something like that here, which we might be able to show you that. Yeah, okay. Actually, you can see the galaxy here, but it's still a little bit low on the horizon. So these are all tree branches right here. So we'll try something else here. Let's see here. Let's do something kind of different. Let's see if we can find the Fishhead Nebula, which is IC 1795. Okay, IC 1795, the Fishhead Nebula. Now, the Fishhead Nebula it's basically part of the Heart Nebula. It's kind of the lower right, I guess you would say the lower right quadrant of the Heart Nebula. So let's see. All right, so this is also in the northeast. And let's see if we can see this one. Still slowing. There it comes. You can see that blue square coming up towards the target area. That is the telescope frame tracking or locking on to the target. Let's see if that one's going to acquire. It's shooting a test exposure now. It detected 939 stars, and we are on it. Let's see if I can center this up a little bit better. It's not really the orientation I would shoot this at, but at least I think at least we'll be able to see the actual fish part of the nebula, or what looks like a fish anyway. All right, so this one's going to require a little bit longer exposure. So let's go ahead and try like a full 60-second exposure. Check the camera gain. Okay, the camera gain is on 120. Focal length is 380. The camera is cool, or the camera sensor is cooled to negative 20 degrees Celsius. That is exactly what we want. That will help clean up some of the noise in the image. So we'll go ahead and start this exposure now. and I'm testing a new, I guess you would say, a security cam tonight. Ooh, there we go. All right, so our exposure just finished up, and we can actually see some of the nebulosity there. Even with just a 60-second exposure, you can kind of see that reddish glow. You can see a little bit of structure kind of around this area right here, if you can see my cursor. I was hoping we could see a little bit more detail, but the moon, you can kind of tell, like the background sky is still kind of, you know, gray, and that is definitely the moon kind of washing that out. But I'll tell you what, let's try to do a live stack on this, just to see if we can get it to show up a little bit better. So we're going to go to live, set our exposures, and we're going to do, let's do 20-second exposures, and this will just keep stacking these together. And unfortunately, I don't have any calibration frames, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think I have any calibration frames to add to this. Whoops, that actually reset that. Okay, 20-second exposures. Save each frame while stacking. Save that. And we'll go ahead and begin these exposures. And now this first frame that'll come in will be only a third as bright as that first exposure. But as these images keep rolling in, you'll start to see more structure. The nebula will get brighter and brighter. The stars will also get brighter. This software kind of knows, like, as it's stacking, that it's really trying to stack the deep space object, not as much the star. So it will kind of like slowly reduce the stars a little bit, but they will get brighter as well. And I think I need to go add another battery to my security camera, because it looks like it is just about done. So while this is exposing, okay, we've got our first image here. And if anybody is in chat, if they would just say like a quick hello. I want to make sure that this chat is working here. I can see my test chats, but I want to make sure that other people can actually log in and chat here while we're doing this. But while this is exposing, I'm going to go pop another battery onto this camera, and I will be right back. So just kind of enjoy these images rolling in here. Let's get people. So you can probably still hear my mic. I am grabbing an extra battery to put on the security camera. Come on, yeah, come on. I was not expecting it to be clear tonight, so I was kind of rushing to get everything set up here. All right, so despite rushing to get everything set up tonight, fortunately we were able to get everything up and running and do a live stream tonight. All right, let's see where we're at. All right, we are back on. Okay, so there's another image coming in. Let's see how many that is so far. Don't tell us there. Okay, but you can definitely see more of the structure is starting to pop out. You can see parts of the Heart Nebula up here. This right here, this section is the actual fish head, and this right here is like its, I guess you would say, its gill plate, and the tail or the body runs back this way, and there's even like a little tail. I'm not sure we'll be able to see the very end of the body here, but there's some really beautiful lines and like circles and swaths of stars in through here. You can barely see, this is some of the central core, the core cluster of stars in the Heart Nebula, but there's other star clusters all throughout this region. It's a really, really pretty area of the sky. Lots of hydrogen gas in this area. And we're still stacking. I'm gonna let this run a little bit longer. I can start to tell that the moon is really gonna wash this one out. So we're gonna really have to target some very, very bright objects tonight. All right, let's see if my other camera is up and running again. There we go. All right, so we've got the view of the telescope there. That telescope is a Celestron EdgeHD. That's the 8-inch version, and you can't see it in this particular view, but there is kind of a specialty lens adapter that is attached, ironically, to the front of the telescope on the front lens, and that's called the Hyperstar. And what that Hyperstar does is, as the light comes in from the back, it reflects off of the primary mirror, and it comes back up through that Hyperstar, and it compresses all that light really, really fast down to a really tight cone. And that tight cone focuses the light onto the camera sensor on the front of the telescope. So yes, I actually have a camera in front of my telescope, and yes, it does block quite a bit of light that is coming in, but since we have such a large aperture, it's kind of a necessary trade-off, because using this particular lens adapter, images that would have normally taken me say like an hour to get a proper exposure on, I can literally do in like maybe 5 minutes. So it speeds up the telescope so much more, but when it also does that, it also reduces the focal length. So it takes my focal length from 2032 millimeters all the way down to 380 millimeters. So what that does is it gives me a wider view of the sky with a higher focal length number. At the 2032 millimeters, it's very, very zoomed in. You only see like a a really small portion. Like if we were looking at this at its full resolution, it would only be like that little central, like just the head of the fish in this particular nebula. Let me look back on. Yeah, it's going to get washed out here. I can certainly see more structure in here. This little area is starting to pop out more. But let's see if we can. I'm going to let this run for just another couple more exposures, and then we'll try something else. Alright, so the Orion Nebula I don't believe is going to be up yet. We might be able to try the Veil Nebula. That would be interesting. Ooh, the Pac-Man Nebula. Now the Pac-Man Nebula is very, very bright. Let's give that a roll. Let's give that a roll. All right. So I'm going to let this last image come in. All right, so we pause that. You can see right in through here, we've got a lot more of the red hydrogen gas. This nebulosity is showing up more here. This area started to pop out. Obviously, this section here has started to get brighter. My focus looks really good tonight. I'm very happy with that. But let's see if we can pull up the Pac-Man Nebula. Let me zoom in to the planetarium software just to kind of show you the fish. So this is the head of the fish. This is the fish's eye. This is his mouth. This is his body and his tail right here. His body, his gills, his lower fin, his pectoral fin. And this would be his dorsal fin area. And then let me zoom out a little. And then this would be the Heart Nebula right here. I can get it centered. You can see the lobes of the heart right there. But anyway, let's look up the Pac-Man Nebula. Is it going to let me paste it? Yes, it will. Pac-Man, go to. All right. It is centering up now. It's solving, plate solving. So once it reaches the target area, like I was explaining earlier, it looks at several different stars, and just using trigonometry, it triangulates this area to make sure that it's centered up properly. And whenever it does that, sometimes it might just be just a little bit off from what you had framed it up as in the planetarium software here. So sometimes you might have to make like little adjustments here and there. It actually did a pretty good job on this one. Now this nebula is right beside this huge star called Shidar right here. Massive, massive star, and there's another large star down below it. But in here, unfortunately, I can't zoom in anymore on this. But this central area, they have what is known as Bok globules. And Bok globules are basically just areas of concentrated dark dust. And these are in front of the nebula. So you have all this bright nebulosity back behind it, and these dark, like, I guess you would say, like blobs or globs in front of the nebula. And you can really kind of see the detail in those dust clouds very well. And Pac-Man is known for having really really sharp Bok globules on here. So let's go ahead and just knock out a live stack. And for this one, let's do 30-second exposures. Save each frame. Save that. Change. And start this. All right, so we are counting down from 30 seconds. Okay, so Kieran Lindsay is asking, why do you take many shorter exposures instead of one longer one? That's a really good question. A lot of times it just depends on all the different variables. It depends on your target, like how bright it is. Say for instance, if we were targeting like the Andromeda galaxy, and I did like a 2-minute exposure, like a single 2-minute exposure, the core of the galaxy would be blown out. It would be just too bright, and we would actually lose a lot of the detail. So what we do instead is we take and we stack many shorter exposures together. That way we don't blow out that central core of the galaxy, and the stacking software knows to stack them together in a way that it reduces that central core brightness, and it retains that detail. Okay, we are looking at our first stacked image of the Pac-Man here. Get back over to. Okay, so surprisingly, you can actually just start to see the Pac-Man feature. This right here would be his mouth, and this is the Pac-Man. But here's his mouth here, and I guess these stars would be his his food that he's munching on here. This is such a cool target. It's I guess I would consider this, like a good beginner's target for people who are just starting into either visual astronomy or astrophotography, because it is a very bright nebula. It's fairly easy to find. It's kind of in the northeast quadrant of the sky. Let's see here. All right, we just got our secondary image. I'm going to click this annotate button right here, and you can see that it has found the nebula, and it surrounds the main core of the nebula here, and it gives us the catalog number, which is NGC 281. And NGC just simply means New General Catalog, and 281 is the sequence number for that. So that it just kind of speeds up the process and finding a lot of these targets. You just put in NGC and whatever the number is, because a lot of these targets, they're not listed by the colloquial name. The name for this one is obviously the Pac-Man Nebula, but in different cultures they might call it something completely different. Most people call this the Pac-Man Nebula, but say for instance they might call it something completely different, in a different country or whatever. So most people will just go by the NGC number. All right, so if I zoom in here, surprisingly, we are just able to see like this dark area here. I know this is actually one of the Bok globules. This section right here is a huge, it's a dark dust cloud that kind of forms the Pac-Man's mouth. And this nebulosity, if I'm not mistaken, it is a mixture of different types of gases. I believe this has hydrogen gas, it'll have oxygen gas, and also sulfur gas. So the sulfur, depending on what filter that you're using to kind of isolate these wavelengths of light that are emitted by the sulfur gas, they'll show up as uh, generally like either a dark red, or depending on your color profile, they might even show up as like a yellowish orange. The hydrogen gas will show up generally as red, and the oxygen will show up as kind of like this cyan, or this kind of greenish blue teal color. And again, that also depends on what kind of filter that you're using. Sometimes they'll kind of offset the color a little bit. Also, according to what software that you're using to stack the images together, it can kind of offset the colors. But this is one of those nebulas that allows you to see more depth, because you have these different gases that are all being emitted from this area, so you get a really good depth perspective into the nebula itself, and it allows you to see a lot of like structures deep inside the heart of it, which is really cool to see, like a finished image of the Pac-Man Nebula. Let's see, let me go back to the zoomed out view, and then the planetarium software for 1 second. And zoom in. So you can see there are some fairly large stars in here, but this right here is one of the Bok globules. There's some smaller ones over here. I specifically remember this one. The first time that I targeted this, I didn't realize that it was there, and when I exposed the image in the astrophotography software, it just blew my mind. It just looked like this dark chunk just kind of floating, right in the middle of a nebula. It was really cool to see for the first time. All right, so it's getting brighter as it's stacking. And let me check our guide scope here. Let me show you what this is all about. So if you look on the top of the telescope here, up in the upper right corner, you see this tiny little telescope that's actually mounted onto the bigger telescope. And that tiny little telescope is what's called the guide scope, and it just is locked on to a certain section of stars, and it's constantly monitoring the position of those stars. And if it shifts in either direction, there's a camera that is mounted into that guide scope that will send tiny little electronic pulses to the tracking mount that the telescope is mounted on, and it will keep that target in line by sending these tiny little pulses, and so it'll keep your target nice and centered. And so this graph that we see here, we've got, if you can see this, it says RA, that is our right ascension axis, and this right here is the declination axis. So with these two axes, it gives you this particular value, and essentially it kind of adds these values together to give you this total value. Not, well, I shouldn't say that, it doesn't really add them together. It kind of, I guess you would say, it kind of averages these to give you this total number. This 0.72 or 0.74 is basically in arc seconds, or arc minutes, arc seconds in this case. But so the lower that this number is, the more accurately that it's tracking your target and the stars that are being looked at through the guide scope. Generally speaking, if this is like 0.8 and below, you're getting super sharp images. If this goes up above, like 1.0, or say it's like 1.5, you will start to see slight trailing in your stars. They'll have like little, almost looks like comet tails, or they'll have like a football shape, or they might have like a diamond shape because the electronic pulses are not keeping up fast enough to keep the stars nice and round. So whenever you see nice and round stars like this, you know that you're getting good tracking. You can also tell that your focus is much better too. But fortunately, our guiding is pretty good tonight. This center line right here is kind of the target median. I guess you would say that you want these lines to stay close to. And you see this word dither here. And what dither means is between each image that it's taking, it stops the exposure just for a second, and it looks at the data from the guide scope, and it says, okay, how far away is it in one particular direction? Let's bump it a little bit more to keep it centered up. And this is what these huge spikes are under that word dither. It's moved the scope, and then you can see how it trails off here and goes back towards the center line. And once this approaches the center line again, it will tighten up. As you can see here, it's already dropped to 0.43. And so that means that it's giving us much tighter guiding. And I'm glad to see these numbers because anything like around 0.4 is very, very good. For my particular scope, if this actually drops from like below 0.39, it's literally actually sharpening, I guess you'd say it's actually sharpening my images for me, just simply through accurate guiding. All right, so I'm going to take this off of the screen. I'll take our annotation off the screen just for giggles. This is this bullseye, or this crosshair here, is kind of how I like to go in and just manually or visually just kind of look at certain stars. Like this star is very close to this central line here, and I'll just kind of watch this over a period of about maybe 10 or 20 minutes, and it lets me know if my target is drifting slightly out of frame. Say for instance you're wanting to frame up this particular target to where I don't know, you want to make sure that this line of stars is always in the frame. Say for instance, if this starts to drift upwards, it'll start to cut off the bottom part of these stars. And so you can just kind of visually look by using these crosshairs just to see how much you're drifting. But when your guiding is really, really tight like this, you just don't have to worry about it. It's kind of making sure that it's nice and framed up for you. So we'll take off those crosshairs. And let's see, let me zoom in a little bit more. We're really starting to see more of the round Pac-Man feature here. You can see some of the darker dust areas in here. This bot globule is really starting to get dark. Notice how this is darkened up quite a bit. So if I let this run for like maybe a full hour, we would be able to produce a fairly decent image of the Pac-Man here. It's still pretty faint in this live view, but generally speaking, for astrophotography, you want to get several hours of exposure time to stack all these images together to really bring out the fine details in it. But since we don't have really a couple hours to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and stop this live stack again, and we're going to find us a different target. And let's go for a galaxy this time. The more that we move towards the moon, the worse that's going to get. But look at there, Andromeda is right on the zenith. This green central line right here is zenith, which basically what that means is, from my position, it is directly 90 degrees above. So If I slewed the target to that, which I'm actually getting really close to that right now, better look at that. Yeah, we're getting very close to that. I need to move this. Let's go to, what is this here? M33. So M33 is the Triangulum galaxy. Alright, we've acquired that. It is shooting the first exposures. It found 365 stars. It locked onto those. Making a little adjustment there. Validating. And we are centered. Alright, and even with just a 2-second exposure, you can see the core of the galaxy here. Since I know this area, I can kind of see that there's one of the spiral arms here. But we're going to, actually, instead of doing a live stack on this one, I'm just going to go ahead and do like a 60-second exposure. And I'm going to boost up the camera gain all the way. That's basically, your camera gain is pretty much like the same thing as like your ISO on like a DSLR camera or something like that. So it's going to acquire light much, much faster. So we're going to start this 60-second exposure. We're centered up. And it's counting down. We've got 45 seconds to go. All right, we're still counting down here. Now, most of the galaxies that you look at in a telescope, say if you're just like looking visually, you know, you're not actually acquiring pictures through a camera. This is kind of what you see, and to some people that might be disappointing, but for the first time that you actually see a galaxy through a telescope, I can assure you it is very striking. It's for some people it's like a life-changing experience, because it just kind of gives you some perspective, about kind of where you're at, in the universe, but just a perspective of about how large these objects are, and I guess also too, how small we are in the grand scheme of things. So it just kind of gives you a different perspective of the natural world and the universe. But here we can see the central core a little bit better from this 60-second exposure. Let me zoom in a little. We can start to see some of these spiral arms, and you can see this line of stars here. And I can just barely see some of the outer arms. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and switch this back to live stacking, and let's just go ahead and do 60-second exposures, and we will watch this galaxy get brighter and brighter. All right, we're starting that one. So let me show you a little bit more about some of the information that that is on the screen that you can see here. Up here in the top corner, you can see the location. I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina here. And down in this area, it just kind of gives you some of the information about the telescope. All right, so we got 5 seconds later, 5 seconds to go on this exposure. All right, coming through now. Well, come on, come on. Send it to us. Huh. That's interesting. Why did that not send it then? Okay, there we go. All right. All right, so we're back to our 60-second exposure there, but again, down here at the bottom, it just tells what telescope that I'm using. It tells the focal length, and I believe I have the filter listed in there. I can just barely make it out. The text is so small. But up in the this upper area here, it gives the location, but it also says Bortle 6, bright suburban skies. Bortle is a classification of how dark your skies are. Say for instance, if you were in Bortle 1 skies, you would have super, super dark skies. You would be able to see things like the Andromeda galaxy with the naked eye without a telescope or without even binoculars, anything like that. You would be able to see the Pleiades star cluster very, very brightly. If you're looking at the Milky Way in Bortle 1 skies, it is so bright that it will actually cast, like you can see shadows on the ground from the glow of the Milky Way in Bortle 1 skies. It's so dark, meaning that there's virtually no light pollution, you know, in Bortle 1 skies. But now where I'm at, I'm in Bortle 6, which means that I have light pollution from the local city lights, and of course it's a lot worse right now because everybody has their Christmas lights up, so there's a lot more light pollution in the sky. And while it's definitely problematic for doing astronomy, astrophotography, the real danger of light pollution is for like migratory species, migratory birds. Light pollution will actually offset the way that they kind of hone in on which way to fly during migration, and it can set them off their path. It can cause them to like fly into buildings. That there's a lot of issues that that light pollution causes that I don't think a lot of people are really aware of the damage that it really causes. You know, every astronomer and astrophotographer out there will complain about the light pollution, but the real yeah, the real danger of it is to animal species. But also too, I think it's something about being in a really, really dark sky area, and you can just see the night sky, see you know, the Andromeda galaxy, huge details in the Milky Way. It affects you in a way that it's kind of relaxing. It kind of helps you reground in nature. Um, there's it's kind of an indescribable feeling when you're in super, super dark skies like that. But the Bortle scale goes from basically Bortle 1 up to what would be like Bortle 9. Bortle 9 would be like, you know, a really, really large city, like you're in the middle of like New York City or like Tokyo or something like that, where you pretty much, when you look up in the city, you can't see any stars whatsoever. You know, you can see the moon, of course, but you're not going to be able to see any stars. You're not going to be able to see really anything at all in the Milky Way. You really have to get into, you can just barely make out the Milky Way and like Bortle 6, but what you really want to do is get into like Bortle 4 and below. Bortle 4 and below is considered dark sky, and that's where you can start to see actual details in the Milky Way. That's where it really gets good. All right, so we've already stacked a couple of exposures here. Let me zoom back in. Okay, we're really starting to see some of these outer spiral bands. You can see the central core of the galaxy here. And what's really interesting about most of these galaxies, and I think this one is no exception, but there's actually a black hole in the center of these galaxies. We did not know this for a very long time. This is something that has just been a fairly recent discovery that yeah, these galaxies actually do have a central black hole. Not all of them, but it seems like the majority of them do. Our own galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, has a very large black hole. We call it Sagittarius. What is it? Sagittarius A, I believe. But in astronomy, one of the things that they do is they'll take multiple exposures of the area where these black holes are, and you can see how it distorts the trajectory of stars that are orbiting around the black hole. Sometimes it can throw them off into a more elliptical orbit, or it can actually even eat the star. If it gets close to that event horizon, it will absolutely pull. It'll start stripping the star of its gas, and it'll just what's called spaghettify it. It'll just strip all that gas directly into the black hole until that star is no more. But to me, it's just mind-blowing to look at images like this, and even though you can't see the black hole, we wouldn't be able to see it even in the most detailed images like this, but we can see the effects of the black hole. And what's really interesting and kind of counterintuitive is that the black hole actually is photographically, it ends up looking very, very bright because it does have some radiation around it from the stars that are orbiting around, kind of swirling around, and all of that light kind of conglomerates and radiates out, so the black hole area actually looks very, very bright. So it's totally counterintuitive. Now, if you could zoom in, much, much tighter beyond that glow, you would see that there's a dark, central region there that, as they say, no light escapes from. But yeah, it's just one of those kind of mind-bending things about space in general. If we look at this image, I'm not 100% sure about this, but if you look right here, this kind of star that looks very, very fuzzy, that is probably another galaxy way back in the distance, back beyond the Triangulum galaxy here, or M33. I'm pretty sure that is a galaxy. Technically it could be a nebula inside the spiral arms of the galaxy, but to me that actually looks like another galaxy way back in the distance there. I'll have to look that up and see if I can figure out the what galaxy that is. Yes, we definitely have to speak up for the migratory birds. All right, so I'm gonna let this expose just a little bit longer, and then we're gonna hop over to a different target. If anybody is in chat, if they want to make a request, I'll I'll take a look at the request, and I'll have to look it up to make sure that it's actually able to be seen in my telescope's view, and we might just actually slew to that. Let me look at my target list here. We might actually, I definitely want to go back to Bode's Galaxy. It's not even 8 o'clock yet, so we might have to wait a little bit longer to see that one. But so in the meantime, we might try either like another star cluster or possibly the Veil Nebula, which is one of my favorites. Come up here. I'm gonna let this expose a little bit longer on M33, the Triangulum Galaxy here, though. I want to see some of these spiral arms start to pop out. And I will be right back. But yes, like I was saying earlier, I was not expecting it to be clear tonight. So I kind of set everything up last minute. I thought that it was probably going to be not only too bright with the moon, but too cloudy as well to really do any imaging. And I knew that even if there were no clouds tonight, that I really couldn't do any serious imaging to where I'm actually going after the targets to maybe get several hundred images, or at least several hours of exposure time on these targets. But whenever the moon is this bright, you're just kind of eventually just kind of get so much moon glow that it just washes out too much detail. You can shoot what's called calibration frames to kind of offset a little bit of that moon glow. It'll subtract out a little bit of that moon glow, but that can only go really so far. So to maximize your the detail in your image, you really do want to wait till the moon is either before it's risen, after it's already set, or at least in a part of the sky that is not shining directly into your telescope. And the more water vapor that is in the air, you'll get a lot more moon glow as well. All right, so we're gonna let this expose just maybe one more image. You can definitely see some of the spiral arms really coming out now, the outer spiral arms in the galaxy. Look back at chats. For some reason, my live stream does not send me the most updated view. I'll have to figure that out. All right. Yeah, I just love looking at this galaxy. I'm just now starting to see, like in this area here, some of the nebula that are in these outer spiral arms, or actually this is actually one of the inner spiral arms. This galaxy would, if it's fully exposed, there's spiral arms that go all the way out. It would completely fill this view right here. So basically what we're seeing is kind of just the inner area of the spiral arms with this short exposure time. But let me zoom back out. You see these dark areas on the outside edges. Technically speaking, this is it's not really vignetting. For the photographers out there that know what that means that you'll get these dark corners from like your lens hood, or your particular lens will cause these dark corners. But this is actually just the bright central area is the moon glow, and the dark areas are where the moon glow is slightly blocked from the telescope's lens hood on it. So generally speaking, if there was no moon out, it would be this dark all throughout the image except for our target. So that's how much 85% of the of a bright moon will basically ruin your image. The Crab Nebula. That is an interesting question. Let's see here. Let's look and see if the Crab Nebula would be up. The Crab is M1. It is just now starting to rise, and it is in the east, actually. Now the Crab is quite a bit darker than, say, for instance, like that Pac-Man Nebula, but we might actually be able to see that. So yeah, we'll give that a try. Let me go back and stop the live stacking. Okay. And again, this was M33, the Triangulum Galaxy. So now we're going to see if we can find the Crab Nebula. Right, go to. Oh gosh, going right over Jupiter there. Okay, so now the Crab Nebula is even though it's a fairly bright nebula, it's super small. But we're going to give it a try just to see if we can get it to show up. Wow. Okay. Ironically, it did. It basically just looks like a tiny little smear right here. But to it, let's do a let's do a 60-second exposure on this, and we'll watch this little smear get a little bit brighter. Our focus looks good. Let's check our guiding. Okay, so right here it says weight setting. It's waiting for the guider to get a little bit more accurate before it starts guiding again. Unfortunately, it still is exposing, so this first image might be a little bit blurred. Okay, here we got our guiding numbers. We're a little bit high right now. Let me show you. So this right here is the guide star, and it does this kind of peak over it to measure the brightness of the star, and it tries to keep it in this central peak, and that's how it kind of measures it. But here's the star that we're locked on. Here's other stars in the view. This is the view of the guide scope. I should have mentioned that, but this is what that tiny little scope on top of the telescope looks like. All right, and wow. Okay, so we're getting a lot of moon glow on this one in a 60-second exposure. Ah, that's a shame. I'm kind of surprised that we can even see this nebula. This field of view is so wide on this telescope. I'm surprised it doesn't just look like this little star right here. But doggone it, I was hoping that we might be able to get a better image of that. But that's going to be way too much moon glow. What else can we try here? Oh, that might actually be glow from Jupiter as well. Orion is actually coming up. I can't help but go to Orion just to see. It probably is high enough to image. Let's see what we got here. All right, we were acquired on that one. Detected 737 stars. It might be still behind some trees here. It's taking a second to solve this one. That is not a good sign. And this might be jumping the gun a little early too, but so let's see. Karen is asking, how about a nebula named after a migratory bird? The Cygnus loop, pelican, duck. The Veil Nebula is actually in the Cygnus loop. It is part of the Cygnus loop. I definitely want to try that one a little bit later. I think we might need a little bit more time to let that one get a little higher in the sky. Let's see where we're at. Okay, so we are locked on, at least it's pointing to Bode's galaxy here. And as I was mentioning earlier, the field of view on this telescope is wide enough to where it is including M82, which is the cigar galaxy. And okay, it's still slewing. And it still might be behind trees. It's not. It looks like it's not able to acquire that one yet either. Okay, let me just double check that. Look at the scope here. This one is just past the meridian here, so we should be okay. You can see the telescope moving towards the target area here. All right, looks like we're locked on it there. Solving the position. So this is NGC 869. Wow, there's a lot of stars in this one. Oh wow, very cool. So we've got essentially two main clusters here, but some really cool like asterisms, like these lines of stars here, some of these lower extensions to these clusters. Now what we're looking at is only a 2-second exposure. So let's just go ahead and do a 60-second exposure on this and just really brighten this one up. It makes me wonder if there might be even a little nebulosity. Look at the okay, from at least from what the planetarium software is showing, you can see how some of these areas are kind of bluish, but then you've got some areas that are redder. Some of these stars are more red. The blue stars are younger stars, and generally speaking, they're going to be very large stars. And even though they're blue, they're much hotter than these red stars. These red stars, they're much older, and that's literally why we start to see them as more red, because they're more redshifted. But these huge blue areas, a lot of times you'll get a little nebulosity around some of these large blue stars. They're so bright, so large that they'll kind of ooh, here we go. Look at that. And again, we still got a lot of moon glow on this one, but it's still cool to look at the clusters, even if they are kind of washed out a little bit. It just blows my mind to see all of these stars kind of clustered together like this. Once the moon drops down in about a week and a half, I might actually come back and do an actual Astro image of this area. Looks like my focus is starting to shift a little bit, so I'm going to do a focuser routine. I will walk you through what that looks like here. So I click on this focuser button, and I'll click on autofocus, and it brings me into the autofocus routine. And I'll just click the start button. And what this does, I have an electronic focuser onto the back of the telescope, onto the focus knob, and it'll take an image through the scope, and it'll find a grouping of stars. It measures the star size, it measures the star brightness, and it tries to basically reduce the glow of that star to as tight as it can get it. And the smaller that you can get that star, the better that your focus is. And sometimes it takes a little while to run through this, but here it's starting to plot a graph, and hopefully it'll drop down towards this area of the graph. Okay, here's the second one. This side over here of the graph is our star size, and this axis here is the focus position on the autofocuser. It's the star size that is measured at here is 5.43 with a luminance peak of 8,000. Okay, so we're getting better. The higher this peak value, the better, and the lower the star size, the better. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And you can start to see this, it'll plot this point spread function, and hopefully it'll drop even lower, and this curve will get more V-shaped. So this should take another minute or so. Okay, wow, it's already moving towards the focus point. So I have to do this every now and then, because as the telescope cools down, it will shift your focus, not just your lens elements, but the telescope tube. There's a lot of things that are kind of in flux as the telescope cools down. And about every hour or so, it's good to come in and just do this focus routine. These electronic focusers make life a lot easier in comparison to having to go back outside in the. Okay, so it did find the focus position, and that is about what I would expect it to be. So we'll close this out, and let's do a. Let's find another target, something a little different here. List. What is a possibility? We might be able to see the beehive cluster. That might be kind of interesting. Let's try that. And that the beehive cluster will help me check my focus too. Shucks, that one's not up yet. Cancel that. Let's just look through the list. Ooh, the Christmas tree cluster is starting to come up. I've been wanting to target that one. Okay, so somebody was asking about bird names. Here's the seagull wings. There's also the seagull nebula, and then here is the baby eagle nebula. Surprisingly, a lot of these nebula are named after birds. This one is really cool, the Witch Head Nebula. We might actually give that one a try later on. That one's still a little bit low. Andromeda is in a perfect spot. Well, that's northwest. No, that's still in northwest. Here's the California Nebula. You know, I've never had a whole lot of interest in this particular nebula. I don't know why. It's a really beautiful nebula, but I've just never really taken a super long exposure of that. Let's try this one. It is directly east right now, so this one should. Wow, we were already super close to it. Okay, slewing to it right now. Just centering it up. Detected 543 stars. All right, we are on it. I can just barely make out some of the nebulosity here. I can tell that there's going to be a lot of moon glow on this one, but we'll just do a 30-second exposure at full gain. Wait, I'm going to cancel this. I can tell my focus is a little bit off. For some reason, my autofocuser is overshooting a little bit, so I'm gonna lower or reduce the focus value just a little bit. I'm going to do a test exposure on this, just a 3-second exposure. And this star should tighten up a little bit. Let me do that one more time. Sorry, I know this is kind of a nerdy thing to do while we have people watching, but this will make sure that the focus is a little bit better overall. That was too much, so let me go back. All right, so a 30-second exposure to start to see some of the nebulosity here. We're counting down, 10 seconds to go. This area right in through here should get a lot brighter. Unfortunately, this is going to get brighter too. This is part of the moon glow, but all right, and there is, just like I was saying, this area, this is actually part of a nebula. This is predominantly hydrogen gas again. The moon is really messing us up here. It's going to be heavily vignetted. That's a shame. That's a shame. I still want to see what a full minute exposure looks like on this, though, to see if we might actually start to see some structure in this area. Check my guide graph. Guiding looks good. And did I lose the state? Nope. Okay, so our 60-second view came in, and unfortunately it is pretty much completely washed out. That's a shame. That's a shame. All right, well, Battling the Moon. Battling the Moon is the name of the game tonight, apparently. All right, let's try C50, the Rosette Nebula. That one might be high enough now. C50. Just to make sure. C49. Okay. So I think it's C50. I think C50 is also inside that. No, and it's still too low. Still too low. Cancel that. Let's just scroll through, see what we got. There's the Sol Nebula. We might be able to just do a quick shot of the Andromeda Galaxy. Let me double check the. Okay, it's in the northwest. Let me just make sure that that's not in the tree line. generally speaking, my northwest view. No, that should work. That should work. M31 right here is Andromeda, and it's not too close to the zenith now, so we should be able to see this. All right, so we're going to that now. Notice how the telescope takes like this arcing path. And that's not Andromeda. This is Andromeda. Let's keep going. Sorry, I forgot to switch screens there on us. I was talking about the central core of the galaxy, and you were looking at the telescope. Sorry about that. Okay, so again, this is the central core of the Andromeda galaxy, and you can kind of see how it's like this big fuzzy patch right here. There's some dark dust lanes that are just starting to pop out through here, but we've got 10 seconds to go on this exposure. Now watch this area right here. These dark dust lanes will start to become a lot more visible. This galaxy here will become more visible, and this galaxy will also become more visible. Now the core is going to be blown out on a 60-second exposure, but we'll be able to see a lot more of it. And here we can see the dark dust lanes really pop out. Here's M110. These are dwarf elliptical galaxies. This is another elliptical galaxy here. You can really see a lot more of the structure. You can even see some nebulosity in this upper section of the galaxy. So let's do a live stack on this. We won't do this very long, and I'm going to drop this down to 10-second exposures to help retain the detail in the core. Save that, start that. And we're counting down. Our first image should be coming through here. Here we go. All right, there's our first 10-second image. Now notice how the core on the 10-second image is a lot less blown out. We can still see the bright central core, but we're able to see deeper into to the heart of the galaxy here. And as these images stack together, we should see some dark dust lanes pop out on this side of the galaxy, and eventually we'll be able to see how they completely make the loop all the way around. So Andromeda is obviously the closest galaxy to us, the Milky Way galaxy. It's kind of the, I guess you would say, the sister galaxy to the Milky Way. That and the Triangulum galaxy, the one that we were looking at earlier, that are kind of considered sister galaxies of the Milky Way. We're all in the same galaxy cluster region. So these 10-second exposures are going to stack very fast here. I'm going to take off the webcam so we can see this lower corner here as this stacks up and gets brighter and brighter. Got a couple of more viewers now. So for those who are watching, I will be recording this live stream. So if you missed, like the first half, please feel free to go to my channel and just click on the live tab, and it'll be saved in there. And this will be episode 2. All right, I'm starting to see more structure here in these dark dust lanes. I can just barely make out one here on the underside of the galaxy. So another couple of minutes, and this right here, these bands should be more obvious. All right, bring the webcam back up here. So one interesting thing about the galaxy that we're looking at here, the M31, the Andromeda galaxy, is that it will collide with our Milky Way galaxy. As a matter of fact, some astronomers have said that this process has already started to occur. The far outer edge of these galaxies have what is referred to as basically a halo, and it's kind of a glow of stars and dust. And basically, the halo of the Andromeda galaxy is just now starting to reach the halo of the Milky Way galaxy. Um, Granted, even though these galaxies are moving together at an incredible rate of speed. I mean, something like, if I'm not mistaken, it's something like 1,000,000 miles an hour. They're moving very, very fast towards each other. The distances that we're talking are so vast that, you know, even looking through the most powerful telescopes, you know, you can't see that motion. But, you know, in several million years, these galaxies will basically come so close together that their gravitational forces will basically tear both of them apart, and uh, bits will be kind of flung out, but most of it will start to kind of congeal back together into a larger galaxy. And these two galaxies will form a very, very massive galaxy. I'm not exactly sure the full time span on that. It might be something like, you know, a couple of billion years that it would actually form back together. Um, of course, none of us will be here to see that, but it is interesting to you know, to look at the science and look at the data on how those processes actually happen. And one thing that I really love about astronomy is that you can look at merging galaxies right now. There are, you know, thousands of areas in the sky where we can actually look at galaxies that have come so close to each other that they're kind of tearing each other apart, and then the gravity is starting to form them back together. And they make all kinds of interesting shapes. There's actually one out there that there's an upper galaxy and then a lower galaxy below it, and they look like in the shape of a rose. They call it the cosmic rose, basically, and it's just these two galaxies that are merging together. But just one of the super fascinating things about astronomy that you get to see. All right, we are starting to. Oh man. So M10 is starting to show up a lot more. These dark dust lanes are really starting to become more prominent. You can kind of see a little nebulosity popping out here. There's even kind of a little star cluster in here, but mostly this area is known for having a lot of nebulosity. Generally speaking, whenever you see pictures of Andromeda, they're going to be inverted the way that this is shown right here. Usually most people will have M110 down below it. Speaking of, I'll show you one of my images of the Andromeda galaxy. If I can find it here. Okay, so this is an image that I did earlier this year, actually not too long ago. This is about, I think it's about 2.5 to 3 hours of exposure time on Andromeda. You can see M110, the galaxy, is kind of cut off down below it here, but you can see the smaller dwarf elliptical galaxy above it. But you can notice how the dark dust bands go completely all the way around the galaxy, and kind of this outer haze of the galaxy, there's kind of like this kind of bluish tint, and some areas almost have like a magenta tint to it, but those are nebula inside these dark dust lanes. So this is exactly the same target that that we're seeing right here, just a different angle of it. All right, so these images are still stacking here. I wish it would give me a number of how many that it's already stacked, but it's not doing that. 3, 2, 1. There's the next one. The moon glow is definitely a lot less on this target, so I'm glad to see that. This is still not, it's still not dark enough to where I would save these images and process them later. I mean, you could certainly pull a lot of detail, out of even like a 30-minute exposure time of Andromeda. You can see quite a bit of detail in it, but we've got other things to see tonight. So after this one finishes, I'll go ahead and stop this one, and we'll find us a different target. Pause that. And let's find our next target. Let's see here. Orion might actually be, well, let's try the rosette first. If the rosette is up, then that means Orion is starting to come up. Back to our objects. C49. Okay, it's just now starting to come up above the horizon. It's only about 20 degrees above the horizon right now. This arcing path, this would be the nebula as it moves through the sky, and this green line right here is the meridian, which like if you're looking either due north or due south, it would be like a vertical line that would represent either north or south depending on which direction, but this would be south for us. Right now it is just coming up in the eastern sky. It's at 97 degrees east, and this tells you which direction that it's heading, but it's still a little bit too low. It's right at about 20-25 degrees, so that's going to be a little bit too low. Let's look at, there's the Baby Eagle Nebula. I've never actually imaged this. It says it's magnitude 0, which means it's quite bright as far as some of the central star features. Why not? Let's give this a shot. It's almost due east, so we'll go to that. And here you can see it's going to swing all the way over. You can see the telescope swinging up in the upper right corner. When it's moving like that, that's what's called slewing. S-L-E-W-I-N-G, slewing. All right, looks like we're about on target. Okay, it's trying to center. I'm not exactly sure what this target is going to look like. I've never imaged it, at least not directly. Okay, so in this 2-second exposure, we can't really see anything. But let's do a 60-second exposure to see. Check the gain here. Okay, 270. All right, starting a 60-second exposure. According to the planetarium software, actually, according to the planetarium software, we are not on target. All right, let's stop that. What happened there? That's twice that it's done that tonight. IC360. Go to. That does not seem right. That does not seem right. Huh, okay. Maybe what happened is sometimes the planetarium software does not have a representation loaded into the view here. This is just kind of like a simulated view. So maybe we are on it, they just don't have a representation. So we will go ahead and start this exposure over again. And according to what we were seeing in the list there should be like nebulosity on the outside edges. It looks like some star clusters here. I would assume that there would be some star clusters in the center here, but I'm not seeing that. I could be totally wrong. We might actually be off target, but I think we are. Let me do an annotation just to make sure. It's not finding anything. So we might be off of it. We might be off of it. Let's let this count down just to make sure. 20 seconds left. While this is exposing, I'm going to let my dog out. I'll be right back. Come on. Come on. Come here. Come here. You want to lay down? Is that what you want? Is that what you want? You want some water? Come on, come on. All right, gotta look after the doggies. All right, so here's our first exposure, and wow, it's just eat up with moon glow. So it will definitely have to find a different one. The moon is just not cooperating tonight, is it? All right, let's find something maybe more towards the south. There's a nebula there. That one's a little bit too faint. We'll poke around Orion a little bit. All right, let me study this and see what might be up. All right, so let's try what is known as the Horsehead Nebula. Now this is probably one of the most photographed regions of the night sky. Pretty much anything in Orion. Pretty much anything in Orion is going to be. You've probably seen images of it somewhere. Everybody images this particular area. You can see the Horsehead right here. This is basically, it's a massive dark dust cloud. And then there's a really bright region here next to this super, super large star called Alnitak. And there's these dark dust lanes through here. This area is called the Flame Nebula. But this is obviously the Horsehead, and you can see this huge bright region behind it. This will actually show up as red on our telescope view. It's just a massive hydrogen cloud behind this dark dust cloud. So let me zoom out and see how high this is. That should be high enough in the sky. I do have some large trees like across the street in my eastern view, but I think we might be good to go to this one. Here it comes, here it comes. It's hard to pass up anything in Orion. It's just, everything is so bright. It's basically the excuse me, the largest and closest and brightest nebulosity to Earth. All right, looks like we are locked on. So let's start a 30-second exposure of the Horsehead. In 30 seconds, we won't be able to see a whole lot, but I'm thinking that we should just be able to make out the Horsehead. In this view, if I'm not mistaken, this region, like the width of the Horsehead itself, is something like 5 light years across. It's a massive, massive structure. It's hard to really wrap your head around how large some of these structures are. Okay, all right, so it's flipped upside down in this view, but you can certainly see the Flame Nebula right here, and then here is the Horsehead Nebula. I wanted to do this shorter exposure because once we start doing longer exposures, this star right here, Alnitak, is going to get super bright, and it'll start to form this huge halo around it. So this is kind of what it looks like tamed down with only a 30-second exposure. But we're going to go ahead and bump this up. We're going to double it, do a full minute exposure. Well, I tell you what, let's just go ahead and start to do a live stack on this. We will do 20-second exposures. Start that. Okay, so counting down, and we're stacking 20-second exposures at the highest gain of 270. So what these structures are, let me go back to the planetarium view just to kind of show you something. So what these structures are, these are dust and gas clouds basically from stars that have exploded. They've kind of spilled their guts per se from large like supernova remnants and star explosions, and just through gravity and through other forces like solar winds, basically radiation pressure that is coming off of these large stars, they'll push these gases. If you zoom in to some of these areas, they almost look like rivers of where the gases are kind of flowing together and flowing away from the stars as they're being pushed by these stellar winds. We should have, okay, we have our first image. Oh, we actually have a tiny little satellite trail here. More than likely that is a geosynchronous satellite because it's so short Yeah, okay. And you can see just within 20 seconds, it's only moved that far. That's a pretty small one too. That's fortunately that's a fairly small satellite. So as these images stack together, we'll certainly be able to see how this flame nebula will get brighter and brighter. The Horsehead will get darker and darker as the background hydrogen gas cloud will get brighter and brighter. If I zoom in on Alnitak here, you can kind of see like these star spikes coming off of the star here. That is actually from the lens adapter that I have on the front of the telescope. Since the camera is mounted on the front of the telescope, there's wires that have to hook in to the back of the camera, and they actually cross the lens of the telescope. And anything that you have like that, like a wire that's crossing the lens, it will slightly distort the light as it enters the telescope, and it'll make these kind of star spike shapes, or sometimes they'll make like little looks like little bites taken out of the star itself. They'll give it like these little jagged edges or whatever. You don't really notice it on the smaller stars, but the longer exposure that you do, the more prominent that essentially those are optical aberrations, but the more that those will be pronounced. So stacking these images together, these shorter exposures will help reduce some of these optical aberrations. And as you stack them together, it'll kind of phase out some of that and kind of tone it down, and it'll look more round. But this star is notorious for forming really, really large halos. In astrophotography images, you can kind of see, I can kind of see it's about this big right here. I don't know if you can see that on your screen, but if you look at astrophotography images of the Flame Nebula and the Horsehead, you'll see some that just have Alnitak just overpowering the image in here. It is a very, very difficult star to deal with. If I'm not mistaken, Alnitak is actually, I believe it's a binary star, which means it's actually 2 stars instead of 1, which can make it brighter. But there are some very, very large stars in Orion. Orion is famously known for being a star-forming region. Let me zoom back out here. Starting to see the red color really starting to pop out here. Another interesting thing about doing astrophotography throughout the night, your telescope, say for instance, is pointing in the east when you start, early in the night. Say that you started at 8 p.m. and as that target moves through the sky, and it'll cross the meridian, your telescope will have to, once it gets towards the meridian, it will flip around and pick up the target as it comes back around the meridian line. That way the bottom of your telescope doesn't run into your tripod. It'll pick back up the target again, and then it'll keep slewing as it moves, or keep tracking anyway, as it moves towards the western part of the sky. And once that target crosses the meridian line, it will flip. The image will flip in your photographic view. So you'll have like a batch of like 100 images that'll be upside down like this, and then once it crosses over the meridian, you'll have another 100 of it right side up. So in post-processing, your software has to automatically flip those and merge those together to bring out more detail. And this is the importance of having a good tracking mount, not just the accuracy, but one that will kind of compensate for that what's called field rotation. The types of tracking mounts that do that are called equatorial mounts, but you have a different type of mount called an alt-az or an alt-azimuth mount, which means that it'll still track the target, but it doesn't compensate for the field rotation. So you can still get good pictures from an alt-az mount, but the equatorial mounts are going to be your higher end, your more of your professional grade or scientific grade mounts will all be equatorial mounts. This one is an equatorial mount. This one is made by a company called ZWO. This model is the AM3. It's a really good travel scope mount. It's not too heavy. It's easy to pack into a suitcase and fly on an airplane with it, which is exactly why I got this one. Alright, so we are still stacking images. The flame, we're getting some really good structure popping out in the flame here. These tendrils, these dark dust lane tendrils that you can kind of see through sections of it here. See some of these background stars. Now what we're not seeing here that really makes the flame nebula interesting is this central dark dust cloud is actually blocking or thought to block some very large stars behind it, and that's why you get this kind of bright in this view, kind of like a cream colored glow, and the essentially just this dark dust lane is obscuring that cloud, so it's almost like the nebula is backlit, which is kind of also what is happening here with the Horsehead Nebula. We're starting to get some structure in the backside. There's a little gap in the back of the horse's head. Since I know this region, I know that I'm getting good detail once I can start to see that gap in the back of the horse head. And there's also, you can't see it here, but in the very top of the horse's head, there's a tiny little star that sits right on top of his head, and that's when you know you've really got a good detailed image of the horse head, is when you can start to see that particular star, especially if it's nice and sharp. So let's look at our guiding here. Our stars look pretty good. There's a little bit wonky. Oh wow, 0.34, 0.33. That's exceptionally good. Wow. I cannot complain about that at all. That is really good guiding. We must have had a couple of images come in that the guiding was not that accurate, because I can see over here they kind of have a slight, football-y or egg shape to them. So as these images stack together, they will get more round over time. But if you get one that the tracking wasn't super accurate, it'll kind of offset your star shapes a little bit. But not a big deal. Not a big deal. That can be fixed in post-processing. Not that we're going to do that for this image, but that is how it's done in astrophotography. The more images that you stack together, the tighter and the more round that your stars should become. Let me look at chat here. See how many viewers. We still got a few viewers here. For those that are viewing, don't be afraid to say hello in chat. If you do have a request about something that you might want to see, just type it in chat, and I'll look it up to see if we can actually view that area in the sky. And yes, I am wearing my my NASA shirt. Us astrophotographers and astronomers have a thing about NASA shirts. We all have them. It's kind of like an OCD or an addiction. We have to have our NASA shirts. And we have to wear them on the live stream. I guarantee you, if you look up Astro Livestream and you watch just a short section of it, you will see them, you know, half the time at least wearing a NASA shirt or something similar like that. They might have like a nebula shirt or something like that. We can't help ourselves. We're just weird and nerdy like that. We love NASA. All right, let me see if I can zoom back out in this view here. This image is actually coming out pretty good. There's certainly, you know, a little bit of moon glow. You can really see it in the top part of the image here, but you can see the difference in the dark corners where there's not as much moon glow. But overall, it's actually looking pretty good. Focus looks pretty sharp. I love this telescope. I love this telescope. Reason being is because this telescope design is called a Schmidt-Cassegrain, which means you have your optical tube. Let me bring up the webcam so I know I'm getting this right for you here. But actually, let me just show you the large view. So you can camera that you're using. The different cameras that you use, they'll give you a different focal length. They'll give you a different view of the sky. Some of them might be a wider view. Some of them might be zoomed in a little bit tighter. But then on this particular telescope, you can also put on the back what's known as a reducer. And this brings your focal length back down to about 625 millimeters. So you've got 3 different configurations just with this one telescope. So it saves you a lot of money in buying multiple telescopes. It is what's known as an astrograph telescope, meaning that it is specifically built for taking photographs of deep space images. they're going to be nice and sharp because the optics are just dialed in really well. The glass is polished really good. The mirrors are all free of optical aberrations, or mostly free of optical aberrations. But it's just a really good telescope design. It probably is about the most popular, or one of the most popular telescopes out there, with both professional and amateur um, um, astronomers and astrophotographers. I've got different kinds. I've got what's known as refractor telescopes. I've got um, some different reflector type telescopes, everything from Newtonian styles to like what's known as a Maksutov style. The refractor style is more of like a telescope, like a camera lens. It just comes in, the light comes in the front element, it's focused down, goes through maybe multiple elements, but then enters directly into the camera sensor on the back side of the telescope. There's no bouncing of the light back and forth. And the refractors are known for producing super sharp images. It's hard to beat the sharpness of a refractor image. Let's go back to the zoomed in view here. I want to look at some of the detail in the flame. Yeah, check this out. Some of these stars are showing up a little bit brighter, but there's a lot of detail. It's almost like these little spider veins popping up inside of the flame nebula into here. And on the horse head, that gap on the back of the horse head is starting to show up a little bit more. You can see his nose of the horse here. This would be the top of his head. So basically the horse head is upside down, of course, but our color is really good. You can see, it's a little difficult to see, but a lot of these larger stars have a little bit more of a blue haze, a blue tint, but some of them have a slightly more reddish tint. Some of these up here are more reddish. So if I do an annotation, here, it shows these are also subnebulas here. We can't see a lot of the nebulosity because these are so faint. But if you, say for instance, if you did like a 2 or 3 hour exposure time, this area right here would start to glow blue. And I think the same with this area here, if I'm not mistaken. But this one right here, I do know that this is kind of a bluish nebula, as opposed to this huge red hydrogen gas cloud here. All right, what time is it here? How long has our stream been going on? So we are right at 3 hours here, so we should probably start to wrap this up. Okay, somebody asked, the tube looks enormous. Well, the whole setup looks large. Is that just the angle of your minicam? What's the diameter? So the diameter of the aperture of this scope is 8 inches. Like the length of the telescope is, well, it's about something like this for the telescope tube itself. But with the hyperstar on the front, it adds probably almost another foot of extension on the front side of the telescope. So the whole thing is, it's probably about this big, and an 8-inch diameter tube. I think in this configuration it probably weighs somewhere around like 17 pounds. And the mount that it rides on will hold up to about 21 pounds. So we're well within the operating limit of it. But I think we're going to go ahead and start to wrap this up. Let me go back to the main screen, and I'll pause this live view. And once again, if you checked into the live stream a little bit late, this will be recorded, and I'll have it on my YouTube channel. It's just Alan Howe, and the live stream is Alan's Astro live stream. I'll do a little editing on the front, so there's not that starting soon slide on the front of the video. But please feel free to comment on the video, and of course always like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I don't have a regular schedule of when I'll be doing live streams, because it obviously is weather dependent, especially in my area. So it's just kind of luck of the draw whenever I'll be able to do a live stream. I will do other astro related content, everything from imaging the sun to lunar imaging. Not all of it will be live streamed, so there's going to be a lot of different astro content on this channel. So I would love to have you subscribe and join us on the live streams. So thank you so much for joining us, and hope to see you again.